Hello to all table tennis enthusiasts, especially those who love long pips and enjoy torturing their opponents with them. In this video, we'll talk about how to terrorize attackers. Let's assume you're a defender, and you play with an inverted rubber and long pimples. How can you break your opponent's brain? I mean opponents with inverted rubbers. I know many pips players dream of doing this all day long. So today, it's your lucky day. Watch the video, and then go to the hall and try it out. Let's look at this topic using the example of a player who is on the screen right now. His name is Valentin Jančić. He does so many clever tricks and deceptions that eating bitter persimmons with onions is more enjoyable than playing against him. You might say that you don't see his attacking opponent suffering from the pips, running after the ball 11 times in a set. Well, yes, that's true. The thing is, at this tournament, the opponents are always chosen to play each other 50-50ths. Even under these conditions, if you pay attention and analyze, you'll see many moments where the defender uses his cunning techniques and the attacker is having difficulties. And maybe some of you think that all these methods and clever tricks only work against beginners or inexperienced players, but won't work against confident attackers. But don't worry, that's not true at all. What you see on the screen is a very high level of play. Very few amateurs can play like that. Even at this high level, all these deceptive methods work great. So, don't worry about it. The only difference is that at the mass amateur level, attackers' problems will look a bit different. At a high level, attackers continue to attack actively, but their accuracy, stability, and so on decrease. At the mass level, attackers will often make mistakes on their first attack or will often be afraid to start an attack. By the way, while we're making these interesting and useful videos and reviews for you, be sure to visit our TT Maximum store more often for your shopping. That will be your best thank you for our videos. So, let's move on to the details now. What does the defender on the screen do? To put it simply, he varies everything he can. First, he has different rubbers, inverted one and long pimples on a sponge. And he twiddle the racket, playing with each rubber on both sides. This complicates the game for the defender himself. But training solves this problem. And this makes the defender's game more interesting for him. For the attacker, it's a source of difficulties. Twiddling the racket during the game is a basic skill if you want to terrorize attackers. It gives many opportunities to deceive and trick, causing different mistakes from the opponents, which will look at you with the eyes of an attacking rabbit. When you're constantly twiddling your racket and chaotically playing with different rubbers, the opponent has to constantly watch this. But concentration has its limits, and if the attacker's focus increases somewhere, it will decrease somewhere else. It's also impossible to always focus and play consciously based on the rubber the defender used. So, when you chop the ball with the long pips near the table, and then with the inverted rubber, the balls fly very differently and need to be played differently. The same goes for the block, chop on the table, and counter hit. The balls coming from long pimples and from inverted rubbers always behave differently, with different bounces, so the opponent will have plenty to do while figuring out your tricks during the game. Next, pay attention that with the same rubber, you can chop the ball differently. For example, the defender at the table. 10 chops with pimples are not the same ball for the attacker. You can chop hard, softer, lightly chop and push the ball more, make it longer, or very short and weak. By chop, I mean a motion where you pull the racket along the bottom of the ball, trying to spin it. And the push is when you make a similar motion, but weakly chop and push the ball more. In these cases, the ball's characteristics will be different. If the opponent doesn't notice the deception, they'll lose the point or give you a ball for attack. Or they'll feel unsure and won't attack. Or they'll make a weak topspin, just to get the ball over the net. These small differences in chopping will not always be noticed by the opponent. Next, the same thing can be done with the inverted rubber. You might have already noticed how the defender chops the ball differently. If you haven't, take a closer look. The defender often changes the chopping technique with the inverted rubber. He constantly varies the ball's characteristics. Even at this very high level of play, not all attackers can confidently attack all these tricky balls. The defender sometimes chops the ball strongly with the inverted rubber, sometimes much weaker, meaning the spin is less, and the bounce off the table will also be different. Or the defender makes the chop with a side move, adding some lateral spin and generally making the ball's characteristics unclear. And the defender also sometimes plays it longer, or very weak and short, sometimes in one direction, sometimes in another. In other words, he varies the spin, the flight trajectory, the bounce force, the direction, the underwater currents near Greenland's shores, and so on. And he does this with both rubbers. And while doing all this, he twiddles the racket. And that's still not everything. He also attacks powerfully. Sometimes with insidious weak topspin, sometimes powerful ones, both from the forehand and backhand. Including after several defensive actions, he attacks strongly on a low ball. And when he makes a weak topspin, it doesn't always have a strong spin. Attackers know this and feel the uncertainty, which slows them down. You can note all this and try to implement it into your tennis. Of course, not all at once, but gradually. The first thing I would start with is twiddling the racket and playing with both rubbers on both sides. This is the foundation that will give you the opportunity to implement all the other clever tricks that will drive attackers to have a blue screen of the brain. A fatal error, like a Windows system crash. Of course, I haven't mentioned all the tricks that this pimple player uses against attackers. He sometimes pushes with the pips near the table, sometimes attacks from afar with the inverted rubber as if he were the attacking player, and sometimes unexpectedly makes a counter drive with the pimples. He also has a particularly nasty chop against topspins with the inverted rubber. Not only against topspins. Pay attention that he chops with a circular motion. That is, he starts the chopping motion from top to bottom, and then the hand gradually turns horizontally. And the question is, what will be the spin of the ball after chopping in the initial phase or in the middle phase? Either way, while I'm sharing all this useful information with you, please hit the like button and subscribe. Likes won't press themselves. When the racket goes from top to bottom, it creates a backspin on the ball. But when the racket begins to turn sideways and processes the ball at that moment, the backspin decreases, and some sidespin is added. If you chop the ball in an even later phase of the motion, the proportion will be different. You can also add a wrist movement or not. And that's how the defender varies the balls throughout the match. The Tennis Fairness Control Agency would be shocked by all of this. Attackers try to keep track of it, but they can't keep track of every ball. And it's impossible to exactly notice at which phase of the motion the defender chopped the ball. So, attackers are always tense because they don't fully understand what's coming and how to play it. They also realize they might have missed something, so they make their topspins less confident or just drop the ball with the risk of a mistake. So, watch closely and adopt these methods for yourself. If you try hard enough, attackers will agree to eat their socks rather than compete with you in tournaments. And if you have any questions on this topic, feel free to ask them in the comments under the video.